I used to love nature. I really did. There was something almost spiritual about getting me away from the suffocating grip of the city, the smog that tastes like copper, the endless noise of traffic, the people who look through you like you're a ghost. I needed to escape that. I felt lucky, truly blessed, because I had a sanctuary, a small wooden cabin inherited from a distant relative, tucked away in a dying village deep within the forest. It was my fortress of solitude. God, how I loved going there on weekends. The silence was so thick you could almost touch it. But notice, I'm speaking in the past tense. Used to. Loved. Why did that change? Why do I now flinch when I hear a branch snap? Why do I double-check the locks on my apartment door in the middle of the safest city district? Sit down, turn off the lights. Let me tell you about the last night I ever spent in those woods. It started like any other Friday. The work week had been brutal. Deadlines, shouting matches, the kind of stress that knots your muscles tight. As soon as the clock hit 5, I was out. I hit the grocery store, throwing instant noodles, canned meat, and a few beers into the cart. I threw my bags into the trunk of my old sedan and hit the highway. The drive usually took 3 hours, but the anticipation made it feel shorter. By the time the paved road turned into the gravel track leading to the village, the sun had already dipped below the horizon. The village itself was practically a ghost town. Maybe 3 other houses were occupied seasonally. The rest were rotting skeletons of wood and moss. I pulled up to my gate, the headlights cutting through the pitch black. It was quiet. Perfect. I parked the car in the yard, locked the gate, and carried my supplies inside. The air was fresh, smelling of pine needles and damp earth. I didn't even bother unpacking fully. The fatigue hit me like a physical weight. I just wanted to sleep. I collapsed onto the old sofa downstairs, pulled a wool blanket over me, and drifted off. No dreams, just the deep, heavy sleep of the exhausted. I don't know what time it was when the sound ripped me from sleep. Wee, oh wee, oh wee, oh. My car alarm. It was screaming into the silent night. A piercing, electronic shriek that made my heart hammer against my ribs. I sat up, rubbing my face, confusion slowly turning into irritation. Great, I muttered, my voice sounding raspy in the empty house. Probably a raccoon. I stumbled to the window, squinting through the darkness. My car sat there, flashing its lights like a disco ball in the void. I scanned the yard. Nothing. No masked burglars. No bears, just the swaying bushes. I grabbed my keys from the table and pressed the button. Chirp, chirp. Silence returned. I sighed, the adrenaline fading, and flopped back onto the sofa. Stupid sensor, I thought. Needs fixing. I was just drifting back into that sweet, gray area between wakefulness and sleep when it happened again. Wee, oh. You have got to be kidding me. I groaned louder this time. I didn't even get up. I just snatched the keys and mashed the button blindly. Silence. 5 minutes passed. I was staring at the ceiling, waiting. Wee, oh. Okay, 1 time is a glitch. 2 times is a coincidence. 3 times? 3 times is a pattern. A cold prickle of unease started at the base of my neck. You know that feeling. The primal brain telling you that something isn't right before your logical brain catches up. I didn't just press the button this time. I stood up. I didn't turn on the lights inside the house. Some instinct told me to stay hidden. I crept to the window, peering through the slit in the curtains. I pressed the fob. The alarm cut off. Now I watched. The yard was bathed in a faint, silvery moonlight, but the shadows near the fence were absolute. I focused on the bushes near the front bumper. At first, nothing. Just the wind moving the leaves. But then, a shadow detached itself from the darkness. It wasn't an animal. It was too tall. It wasn't a human. It was too wrong. A silhouette rose from behind the shrubbery. It was gaunt, stick-thin. It looked like a skeleton wrapped in black rags. It had to be nearly 7 feet tall, unfolding itself like a spider. I watched, paralyzed, as it moved toward my car. Its movement was jerky, unnatural. It raised a limb, too long to be a normal arm, thin as a reed, and thumped the tire of my car. Wee-oh. The alarm blared again. The thing immediately scurried back into the bushes with terrifying speed. It was hiding. It was waiting. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't a malfunction. This was a lure. I stood there in the dark, my hand trembling so hard the keys rattled softly. I pressed the button again to silence the alarm. I needed to see what it would do next. The silence stretched out. A minute, 2. Then the shadow moved again. But it didn't go for the car this time. It moved toward the gate. I watched as it effortlessly stepped over the fence. Not climbed, stepped. Its long legs clearing the barrier like a daddy long legs. It reached the latch. I heard the metal groan. It unhooked the gate from the inside. It opened the way. It wanted a clear path. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my system. Who is this? What does it want? Why won't it just leave? I couldn't move. My feet felt nailed to the floorboards. A wave of goosebumps washed over me, from my scalp down to my heels, vibrating through my bones. My mouth tasted like dust. My mind raced, painting horrific scenarios. Is it going to break in? Does it know I'm watching? I forced myself to snap out of it. I needed a weapon. I needed light. I needed to do something other than stand there like a lamb, waiting for slaughter. I turned to run up the stairs, thinking I could barricade myself in the bedroom. But as I passed the hallway window, the big one that looks out onto the porch, I froze. I reached for the light switch, but my hand stopped midair. There was a face pressed against the glass. It was looking in, cupping its hands around its eyes to block out the glare of the moon, trying to see if anyone was home. In that second, the realization hit me like a physical punch. The car alarm, the waiting, the hiding. It was all a game. It was trying to annoy me. It wanted me to come outside to check on the car. It was baiting a trap, and now it knew I hadn't taken the bait. It was right there, inches away. The glass began to fog up from its heavy breathing. I was horrified, repulsed, but I couldn't look away. I was locked in a staring contest with a nightmare. Its skin was the color of ash, gray, dead, and dry. It was covered in deep, cavernous wrinkles, like a dried-up riverbed. Its eyes, dear God, its eyes. They were small, black beads, sunk deep into the skull, devoid of any white, devoid of any humanity. Where a nose should have been, there were just 2 vertical slits, flaring with every raspy breath. And then it smiled. Or at least, I think it was a smile. It had no lips, just 2 rows of jagged, yellow teeth, exposed to the gums, interlocking like a bear trap. Because the inside of the house was pitch black, it couldn't see me standing there in the shadows of the hallway. But it knew someone was in there. It didn't leave. After staring for what felt like an eternity, it pulled away from the window. I heard its heavy, wet footsteps on the wooden porch. Thump, thump, thump. It stopped at the front door. Knock, knock. Polite, mocking. Then another knock. Louder. I backed away, retreating to the stairs. my eyes glued to the gap beneath the door. I saw long gray fingers, too many joints, sharp, dirty nails, slide into the gap between the floor and the door. They wiggled, scratching at the wood, trying to find purchase. Suddenly, the doorknob exploded into motion. It jerked violently up and down, rattling the frame. Clack, 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 clack. And then came the sound. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't human. It sounded like a large dog when you try to take a bone away. That deep, guttural vibration that you feel in your chest. But this was deeper, wet, malicious. A low, rumbling growl that morphed into a high-pitched whine of frustration. Curdy. I knew with absolute certainty that if I made a sound, if I screamed, if I dropped my keys, if I even breathed too loud, it would frenzy. It would tear that door off its hinges. I slowly, silently, sank to the floor on the stairs. I curled into a ball. I was a grown man, crying silently in the dark, tears streaming down my face, my hands clamped over my ears to shut out the scratching, the rattling, the growling. My temples throbbed. My heart felt like it was going to give out. I don't remember falling asleep. I think my brain just shut down. A fuse blew from the overload of terror. I blacked out. I woke up with a gasp. Light, beautiful, blinding sunlight was pouring through the dusty windows. I lay there on the stairs, stiff and aching. For a solid 10 minutes, I listened. Birds were singing. The wind was rustling the trees. Normal sounds. I scrambled up, ran to the window, and looked out. The yard was empty. The gate was wide open. I didn't pack. I didn't brush my teeth. I didn't even change my clothes. I grabbed my car keys and my wallet. I opened the front door, terrified it would still be there waiting. But there was nothing, except for the door itself. The heavy wooden door was covered in deep gouges. Splinters littered the porch. The metal handle was bent at an unnatural angle, almost twisted off. I ran to my car. On the soft earth of the driveway, I saw them. Footprints. But they were massive, long and barefoot. They circled the car. They led to the window. They led to the door. I jumped into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and gunned the engine. I didn't look back. I drove over the potholes and rocks like a madman, desperate to hit the asphalt of the main road. I drove for an hour before my heart rate settled. I needed noise. I needed human voices. I turned on the car radio, scanning through the static until I found a local news station. I was just beginning to convince myself it had been a hallucination. Stress, sleep deprivation, a bear. Then the news anchor's voice cut through the speaker. Breaking news from the Chatonga district. Police have discovered the bodies of 2 missing female tourists in the marshlands near the abandoned village of Kirovskoye early this morning. My blood ran cold. That was the village next to mine, just 2 miles through the woods. Authorities report the bodies were brutally mutilated. Forensic experts suggest an animal attack, though the nature of the injuries remains unexplained. The victims were found in a swampy area, stripped of their belongings. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. It had left my door. It had given up on the house that wouldn't open, but it hadn't given up on the hunt. It found what it was looking for. It found someone else. I never went back to that cabin. I sold the land for dirt cheap to a developer 2 months later, without ever stepping foot on the property again. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm safe in my city apartment, I hear a car alarm go off on the street below. Just a normal city sound. But I don't go to the window anymore. I just pull the blankets up, shut my eyes tight, and pray that whatever was scratching at my door that night stayed in the woods. But looking at those footprints, and knowing how smart it was, I'm terrified that one day it might decide to follow me home.